Welcome to the Schuby Show, where sports, movies, TV shows, technology, history, and more come to life. Now, please be seated and get ready for some more never-ending nonsense with yours truly, Schuby.
Hello, and welcome to the Schuby Show, or this is the Schuby Show. I forget, you go from hello and welcome to the You Don't Know Jack Show, which is my other podcast. And this is the Schuby Show, so I'm missing up my introductions. But today we've got a very special episode in store for all of you listening. And the first guest that I have on the phone today is Twins beat writer for MLB.com, and that is Rhett Bollinger. He's kind enough to join the Schuby Show today. And Rhett, how is that 3-0 and sweep over the Royals treating you so far?
Well, definitely better than last year when it was 0-9. They're definitely not fun to cover. The Twins are 0-9, and the season was kind of over before it even started. So
yes,
the team is definitely very, very excited right now, being 3-0. The clubhouse is definitely a lot more lively than last year. You can tell the guys are a little bit more relaxed and more confident now with those 3 wins. So definitely a good sign because the Royals, are a pretty good team too. We'll see how it goes the rest of the year, but I mean that was definitely a good showing, both kind of all the way around.
All right. So I also am joined by a college classmate of mine, and that is Nate Hoogland, I believe, is how you pronounce your last name, Nate. I haven't actually asked you about that.
Close enough.
Close enough. Hoogland? Is that?
Yep, right there.
All right. Nate, I appreciate you joining the show today also. Just kind of ask some more questions for Red as well here towards the end. And Nate, how are you doing? What's new with you?
Not a whole lot. Just enjoying the Twins actually scoring runs this year.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good sign. They're actually hitting early, unlike it seems like the last 5 years they haven't been able to hit until like halfway through the month of April. So it's good to finally get that early on, as Rhett probably remembers all those 5 years of not able to hit in the early month of April. So, Rhett, we'll get started with you asking some questions. What has been the most surprising aspect of these first 3 games for you, and why?
I think probably the most surprising thing has probably been the bullpen. The bullpen's been really good. I think that's still kind of the Twins, kind of their weak link is the bullpen in general. But so far the bullpen's looked pretty solid. Matt Belisle's been scoreless all 3 times. Kinsler's looked good. Presley came into a big jam there with the bases loaded, and 1 out and got out of it. Breslow's the one guy who looked a little bit shaky, right, with the walk and all that with his new delivery. But to me, the bullpen, we'll see how they do, going forward only 3 games. But it was definitely a good sign to see them, definitely do so well early on because, I think that in general, there's not really one ace reliever out there. I mean, I think Rogers and Presley have the chance to kind of break out and have a good year. But in general, I still think that the rotation, the bullpen is kind of the team's weakest link right now.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. And some people are saying that the starting rotation is pretty weak, but so far they've been good. I think if this rotation lives up to being even up to average or up to what they're expected to be, maybe even up a little more, I feel like this rotation could be decent. I don't think it's going to be above average rotation, but I think it can at least be a top 20 rotation in the league. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree with that. That's a good point. I think that you're right. I think if they can even be decent, this team could be decent. Even 2 years ago when they were, 83-win team, the rotation was better that year. That was the 1 year in the last, 6-7 years that the rotation was actually, competent. It was a rotation. I think they finished something like 18th in ERA. So it wasn't like they were great, but they were at least, league average, and it allowed the offense to kind of get going and win some games. I think this year, you're right. I think that if, I think what you're going to get out of Urban Santana, Hector Santiago. You never kind of, you don't really know. I mean, he definitely looked better in that first start that he kind of did, with the Twins when he first came over last year, but he did finish pretty strong last year.
Yeah.
The White Sox, right? So
yeah,
it's hard to know what he's going to do.
So you mentioned Matt Belisle. He has actually pitched all 3 games so far. What are your thoughts on that so early in the season, pitching your bullpen in 3 straight games? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it helped they had the off day on Tuesday, so I think just him going on Monday at the day off and the back-to-backs, there's pretty much no chance he'll pitch, tonight, Friday night here in Chicago. And you got to figure back off him a little bit. And they still got, they've got so many bullpen arms now too, with carrying 13 pitchers. They haven't even used Michael Tonkin yet. They used Duffy for only one inning, so they definitely have options. So I don't think Bilal will be overused too much, at least in the early going. But so far, he's been good and been used a lot.
Yeah, he has. He's been doing good. So I mean, but we don't want to overuse him either. So what's been the least surprising thing for you so far of this Twins team?
That's a good question. I think the least surprising thing is probably, to me, has been Irvin Santana's opening day start was definitely not surprising to me, just how good he was. He looked so good in spring. He was so good to finish last year. 2 hits is pretty impressive. I haven't been too surprised by Miguel Sano's start either. Sano also finished spring really strong. They really have struck out a lot in general, but it's been good to see. But yeah, that's a really good question. I can't think of anything other than maybe Santana's really, hot start that really surprised me. I thought he was going to pitch well on opening day, and he did.
Yeah. So you talked about Miguel Sano and his locks, his new hairdo that he's got going on. He's kind of in beast mode right now. He hit a home run that was just a blast in left field, and then he hit a big fly ball off the right center field fencing, the triple. He is definitely showing that he's still got power. That's a good thing, right? What has been working so well for him? I mean, it seems like he's been way more patient at the plate than we're used to seeing.
Yeah, definitely. I think he struck out one time all year so far.
Yeah.
That's probably one of the more surprising things, I think, this season in general is, only one strikeout for him. But yeah, I think he worked really hard with the new hitting coach, James Rowson. He changed his mechanics a little bit at the plate. And it kind of, took a little while to kind of get going, striking out a lot in spring. But yeah, you're right. I mean, he's been crushing the ball. I mean, he's hitting the ball really hard. So the home run, the triple off the wall, even yesterday, he had the hard hit single, and then scores on Castro's go-ahead, double, and scores from first base too. So he's running well. At third base, he's looked pretty good. So yeah, I mean, he's definitely been their biggest star so far in a sense. But the thing about Sano is, as I'm sure you know too, is he's so streaky. He goes in these streaks sometimes where he'll hit 4 home runs in 3 games, and then all of a sudden he won't hit a home run again for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever. So for him, he's got to kind of be more consistent this year. So it's a good sign that he's been so good out the gates, but he's got to keep kind of seeing once he faces some better pitching too.
Yes. Somebody that actually hasn't been playing so well, Byron Buxton in the first 3 games. I think he might have had 1 hit on I think it was a fielder's choice actually on a bunt maybe, but maybe 1 hit. That is probably it for Buxton. He's been hitting in the 3-hole though. I'm kind of scratching my head on that one, and maybe it's something with the new analytics department kind of telling Paul Molitor to put him in the 3-hole for some reason. But what do you think has been the reason for his struggles, and why is he hitting third?
Yeah, great questions. I mean, Buxton has had just the 1 hit. It was little ground ball to third base that he beat out. Otherwise, I think he's 1 for 14 with, I think, 7 strikeouts. I mean, he's definitely striking out a ton too. As for hitting third, it's something that Molitor experimented with a lot in spring. They feel like Buxton's going to have a lot of power. I mean, last September, he hit, the 7 home runs or 8 home runs over his last 29 games. So he's kind of a pull hitter now. So as much as he's really fast, I think they kind of see him as more of a power guy a little bit. But so far, it's only 3 games, so you can't read too much into it. You wonder, though, sometimes, batting him third puts a little bit more pressure on him. Just kind of like remember the first time he was up, they're batting him lead off and kind of put pressure on him. And sure enough, it just, you got to wonder if he's going to move around the lineup eventually. But as of right now, Molitor was asked after the game, if he was thinking about moving Buxton around. And he said no. He said it's been 3 games. They won all 3 of them. Buxton's off to a slow start, but that happens sometimes, and it kind of gets magnified when it happens at the start of the season.
Yeah. I wouldn't say that I'm upset with Buxton's struggles, because, I mean, you can kind of expect that as a young player, and it's just the start of the season. But it's just, I think it's kind of more pressure from a hitting aspect to be put as the number 3 hitter than the number 1 hitter, because if you're put at the number 3 hitter, you're basically saying this is our best hitter, hands down, and I don't think Buxton is at that point yet. I don't know what you think on that.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, totally. It does put him a lot of pressure, and I think even yesterday, in a big situation in the sixth, he came up with the bases loaded, and sure enough, struck out against Peter Moreland, who's, not even a very good reliever. He's got a good slider. So, yeah, I mean, it puts him in a lot of big situations and that kind of stuff. And it's clear at this point that, Miguel Sano has kind of been that better hitter right now. And maybe you're right. I think that, but at the same time, I don't know that Buxton's going to bat leadoff anytime soon. Just from talking to Mulder in spring training, he said he doesn't see Buxton as a leadoff hitter right now. It sounds kind of crazy because Buxton's so fast.
Yeah.
But I think part of it too, he's not getting on base a ton. Just in general, I mean, even, I think he has one walk so far. Been on base machine in the majors either. So I think that's kind of why he's not the leadoff guy. But it is a curious thing to have him hitting third right now.
Yeah, and we'll get to the my ideal lineup here in a moment. Some more questions here on Buxton. Why do you think so many people chose him as a potential breakout player this year?
I think it's because of that September. He was so good. I think that's kind of the reason why he finally showed it in the majors. Because, I mean, really, you look at it in terms of, how big of a prospect he was. He was, the number one prospect in baseball for 3 straight years. He was getting comparisons to Mike Trout, to players like that, and a lot of hype. And then sure enough, he's kind of failed to deliver. And finally, in September, he kind of showed why everyone was so high on him. And I think that's kind of why going into this year, he kind of had so much hype again. And so far, 3 games, it hasn't really worked out, but it's only 3 games.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, he certainly hasn't lived up to the Mike Trout comparisons yet. And that's hard for anybody to do.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
So this is kind of from Nathan here. He says he's heard some people mention that Buxton has improved his swing. He's kind of has more confidence. But is there one thing specific that makes him stick out to you this year? Why he could be better? I think is what Nathan's trying to say there. Nathan, if you want to improve that, you can.
Yeah, basically just what you said. Is there one thing that sticks out to you on why he's going to break out?
To me, the one thing actually has more about his confidence and just his overall mentality, I guess you'd say. I think that he put too much pressure on himself when he first came up. I think he kind of got in his own head. And I think even mechanics kind of got in his own head, and he was thinking too much about his mechanics and thinking too much about not striking out and that kind of stuff. And I think before September, Torrey Hunter kind of got to him and talked to him a little bit and just told him, hey, go out there and have fun this last month and don't think so much. Just go out there and play. You can play.
Mm-hmm.
He crushes it in the minor leagues. And when you get to the majors, you can't sit there and worry about, all that kind of stuff when you get to the plate or else you're going to be done. So I think that he's kind of realized that. I know obviously that the slow start kind of doesn't really show that, but I do think that right now, even if you were to talk to him, he's much more confident than he ever was before, and so I think that's a good sign. I think that's kind of the big thing I've noticed. Even when he walks in a room now, he's more confident. Even with the media, he's much easier to talk to. He used to be kind of shy and reluctant. Now he's kind of a great talker with us even, and I think the confidence to me is the biggest thing I've seen. His swing has changed too. He's got the leg kick like he did in high school, that kind of thing, but I think the one thing to me is just his confidence and his overall kind of mental, I guess you'd say, makeup, I guess.
Yeah. Do you think Buxton is one of those guys that gets in his head right away, all right, I'm going to swing at this pitch, or all right, I'm going to take this pitch, or do you think that he actually just actually goes with what the pitcher is doing? Because I feel like every time he's already made up his mind he's going to swing before the pitch is even thrown sometimes.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that's kind of one of the issues. I think that even this year, you look at how many times he falls behind 0-2 and how many times he's 1-2, just the 2 strikes in general, because he kind of gets himself in these, tough counts to hit in. Mm-hmm. It's a great question. Something I should probably ask him about, just, more about his actual mentality at the plate, because, it's hard to know exactly what he's thinking up there, but you're right. It seems like he doesn't really always have a plan, but last September he clearly did, and then had a lot of power and did pretty much everything right, but so far right now, it just seems like, he's getting behind 0-2 and kicking himself out of those, deep holes in the count.
Yeah. All right, moving on. My ideal lineup. It's changed a little bit since before opening day. The lineup that I kind of wanted. So I've got Buxton if he improves at number 1, and assuming this is a lineup assuming there's a right-hander on the mound. Joe Mauer hitting second, Dozier hitting third, Sano hitting fourth, Kepler hitting fifth, Castro sixth, Grossman seventh, Rosario eighth. Even though I've kind of been impressed with Rosario a little bit, I mean, he's still got some improving to do, but that hit up the middle was pretty good, even though it was out of the strike zone. But you can't tell a hitter like that if he's going to hit the ball and get a base hit, then you can't really say, don't swing at that, really. I mean, I don't know. And then Polanco, I have 9th, and I kind of said Polanco and Buxton could alternate depending on if Buxton improves. But I've been impressed with Polanco, too, and I think he's always had that ability to hit. What are your thoughts on my 9 there?
Yeah, I like it. I think obviously it kind of would depend on if they're facing a lefty or a righty.
Yeah.
I think against lefties it would certainly change, right, to mix it up a little bit and get Grossman up higher in the lineup, that kind of stuff. But to me, it makes sense. I've always kind of liked Butts in the top of the lineup, but I don't think Mulder is going to do it for whatever reason. He said in spring is not really something he's looking at. But yeah, I think Mauer, even having him up high too makes sense because he gets on base.
Yeah.
But I even move Polanco up too. I like Polanco a lot. I do think Rosario needs to kind of be 8 or 9 hitter as much as I do like his potential. He just swings at everything, and like you said, even that hit was a 3-2. It was a fastball up and out over the. I think it was up and he swung at it anyway, and sure enough, drove it into center. But yeah, I mean, I like Polanco's offensive potential more than I like Rosario's. But Kepler's showing signs too. Kepler had a pretty slow spring. I was kind of a little worried about him. And sure enough, he's been hitting the ball pretty hard too. So that lineup to me makes some sense. And Castro's been their best hitter other than Sano.
Yeah, he's been swinging the bat well. That's good to see after he only hit .211 last year. So
yeah, that's been a big surprise.
So Polanco, do you think he's got the ability to be a leadoff hitter in the future? Because I like Dozier maybe as a leadoff hitter because I think he's shown some more patience, but just his ability to hit the home run, I want him at the 3 or 4 hole. What are your thoughts on Polanco leading off? Because I think he's got the ability to hit. If he shows a little bit more patience, he's definitely got the speed, I think, to steal bases too.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I think the hard thing, you're right, he doesn't really walk a ton, so he doesn't get on base a ton. Yeah. But I think he's a different enough average that'll make up for it. I think he can be a 300 hitter.
Yeah.
And you're right, and that speed definitely will play. He can definitely run. So I could see it. At the same time, same thing with the Mulder stuff. For some reason, he just loves batting Dozier leadoff, and I just don't think that's going to change. It just seems like, in talking to Dozier likes batting leadoff. Dozier likes hitting those leadoff home runs to open a game, that kind of stuff. So as much as I do think that would, in both of our opinions, I think that's a good idea. Is it going to happen? Probably not, because I just think at this point, at least not for a little while, I think at this point, Mulder is going to roll with Dozier as the leadoff guy for the foreseeable future. But I do think that you're right. I agree that, you're kind of wasting his home run potential sometimes batting him leadoff that much. But whatever works. I mean, he hit 42 homers last year. Sorry to complain, but it'd be nice to get a couple more with guys on base, right? So
Yeah, I can see both sides, but that's just personally what I have.
Exactly.
So why do you think the pitching was so good in the first series? Do you think it was just because they were that good, or do you think that the Royals were kind of off to a slow start?
I think the Royals were off to a little bit of a slow start. I think on both sides, I think that the Royals offensively couldn't really get it going. And their pitching staff, it was amazing how bad the Royals bullpen was. Walking everybody left and right. I mean, that's, usually their strength.
Yeah.
So that was a surprise, to see how bad they were in that sense. But I do think the Twins pitching showed some good signs. Like I said, I wasn't surprised by Santana being so good.
Yeah.
Santiago was, effectively wild like usual. Gibson, I was expecting a little bit better out of him. The home runs, I think, weren't that bad at pitches, though. But I really thought that with Gibson's spring and the fact that he's kind of changed his mechanics, maybe he could have a little better start. And he usually has pretty good numbers against the Royals. And he wasn't bad, but he wasn't, he had 3 runs in 5 innings. He wasn't, great either. Right. So I think the pitching, though, and in fact, I said earlier, the bullpen was a big surprise. I do think some of it was the Royals just weren't really playing well in general. But as I said, anytime you can get good pitching from the Twins, especially early in the season.
Yeah. And it seems like, too, the Twins aren't giving up those big innings like they were at least the first 3 games so far. Seems like maybe the Twins got away with some pitches that pitchers kind of made mistakes, but either the Royals hitters popped them up or fouled them off. It seems like that those pitches last year were going over the fence or into the gap for a double, and that wasn't happening the first part of the series, and I think that's part of the reason why they won all 3 games.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think the big example of that, too, was yesterday when the Royals had the bases loaded with 1 out. And, I think it was the 6th inning or 7th inning, and 6th inning, and they brought in Presley, gets those 2 big outs. I think in years past, especially the Royals against the Twins, bases loaded in the 6th with 1 out. Twins reliever in the past, he would come in and give up, a double into the gap to score 3 runs, or at least, a sac fly or something, something to bring a run home. And sure enough, Presley, I think, is, got the potential to be their best reliever, came in and got those 2 big outs, the liner to center and the ground ball, which was huge. And then sure enough, the very next innings when they broke out for the 2 runs with Castro with the double and Blanco with the double. So that was, and I think big thing too is just, I feel like last year in general too, whenever the Twins would have a big inning of their own, they'd give it right back. It was always they had very few shutdown innings. And I feel like this year they've had these big 7-run outbursts or 2-run outbursts late in the game, and then sure enough, the next inning they back it up and they get the Royals out. Although yesterday wasn't, they had that issue though where they took a lead and then they gave the home run to Moustakas. Yeah. So it still can happen a little bit, but I think you're right. I think they got to kind of continue to shut these guys down after they score.
Yeah, so obviously Buxton's catches on opening day, one was kind of, I kind of said, he's kind of showing off after the one he fell down and just went and got. But obviously that played a big part in kind of sparking the offense, I think. But the big deal to me is when the Royals had that lead, after they got the lead on opening day, and Sano came back with that home run. I feel like that was a huge moment because the Twins oftentimes would be down 1-0 and they wouldn't score for innings and innings before they finally scored. And by that time, the other team had put up 3 or more runs after that. So what are your thoughts on the Sano home run kind of changing the outcome of not only that game, but also the series?
I think that's a really good point. I actually definitely agree with that. I think you're right. I think that kind of getting that confidence going for the team. I think you're right. Sometimes it snowballs when you give up a couple runs early and then you can't get back into it. And last year, as we know, the 0-9 start just kind of snowballed into the rest of the year. I think you're right. I think it kind of picked up the fans because there really was a good crowd on opening day. It was a full sellout. It was really loud. It was the loudest I've heard Target Field in a really long time. And that home run kind of brought everybody to their feet and kind of got them excited again. And sure enough, from there, they kind of built on that. And they obviously had a big blowout there with the 7-run or 6-run 7th. So yeah, it was definitely a kind of a thing where it kind of woke up the team a little bit and energized them. And you're right, I guess it could even kind of carry on the rest of the series where that confidence with the team was up, which was a good thing to see considering last year that was definitely not the case really at any point in the season because it was such a being 0-9, it just kind of killed everything. And I think that being 3-0 definitely can change the mentality compared to 0-9, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's right. And it seems like kind of the Twins have been doing the little things, like Kepler beat out that ground ball and other things kind of like that. What are your thoughts on the little things kind of helping out the Twins?
Yeah, definitely, absolutely. Like I said, those 2 back-to-back bunts by Kepler and Rosario as part of that big rally. Last year, the Twins had trouble even with getting bunts down. As crazy as that is, as a major league team, they couldn't get bunts down. They couldn't do much of anything last year that a big league team should do. And the thing about the Twins last year, as you know, is they lost 103 games, but they also did it in style. And they lost the games pretty ugly. There's a pretty funny highlight tape out there. I don't know if you've seen the highlight tape from last year that I think Parker Hageman, one of the guys from Twins Daily, made, where it's just all these Twins ridiculous errors and like bloopers basically from all last season. It's hilarious. Just because it was it wasn't just they lost, they lost ugly. And I think the little things this year are showing up where they're playing better defense. They're, getting bunts down. The only issue they really had so far was kind of both Danny Santana. Danny Santana yesterday threw to the wrong base and allowed a run to score, which was a bad throw. And then he also couldn't get a bunt down later in the game and struck out. So he's been the only guy so far that's been kind of guilty of not getting the little things right. But otherwise, the defense has been crisp and they've been getting the bunts down. They've been getting runners in and definitely doing all the little things right for sure.
Yeah, it seems like that's what Kansas City was doing, and the Twins flip-flopped with them. They weren't doing that this series, and the Twins were. So let's, unless you have any other thoughts so far on the first 3 games, I'm going to play some over-under with you.
Cool, that sounds good to me. I'm ready for that.
All right. So wins it will take to keep to have Paul Molitor keep his job. 75 over-under.
Well, that's a great question. I would say over, just because I think he needs to have a good season. We'll see how his relationship goes with the new front office. I think right now it's pretty good, but it's hard to fully know. We'll kind of see how it goes along, but I think they have to have a season kind of similar to they had 2 years ago, where they surprise and are kind of more close to 500 for him to keep his job. In his last year of his contract, So you never know if these new guys kind of have their own guy in mind in terms of how they want to kind of run the club. I know that they really like having Jeff Pickler on the staff. He's kind of more the analytic guy and been helping out with defensive positioning, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But to me, I think the Maulers got to have a good season to come back after this one.
Yeah. All right, Buxton's batting average, over under 275 for the season, and that's what I had at opening day, and now it's like, well, maybe over under 250, but 275.
Yeah, I'm a little bit under that at this point. I think I think he might hit more like 260 though, or something like that. I don't think he's too much under. I think he hit 260 with some power and some speed. I do think he's still going to break out. I definitely am so high on him. I know the 3 games were not encouraging or kind of everything we've seen from him before when he struggled, but like I said earlier, I think that his mental makeup and just his overall ability to overcome that is better than it's been in the past. I don't think he dwells on things as much. And you see how good he is defensively. I think he's going to hit probably more like 260, but I do think that he's going to have a much better year than he's not going to do this all year.
Yeah. Sano and Dozier, a combination of home runs, over under 70.
That's a lot, but man, I do think that last year 42 for Dozier.
Yeah.
They hit average 35 each. I might go conservative and go on the under.
Okay.
But I do think they both, have 30 home run potential, 40 home run potential, really. I mean, you look at Sano's overall power. It's just hard to see, I'm curious to see if Sano can keep it up and be consistent. But I do think those guys have a ton of power. And, I think once they get Byung Ho Park back up here at some point, I think the middle line could have some serious thump there.
Yeah. I went with 65 as my number. I figured that Sano might have a little setback during the middle of the season or something like he kind of always seems to have, unfortunately. But
or a hamstring or something like that. Yeah, I kind of agree with that,
Yeah. So how about Irvin Santana? ERA over under 2.8 and wins over under 10.
I would say that the ERA is going to be over that. I mean, last year he had a great year. His ERA was 3.38, I believe. So, I mean, that's about as good as you're going to get from him. I think that was kind of a career year for him in some senses. But the defense is better too, though. So you never know. I mean, I think last year it's pretty impressive he did that with a bad defense behind him. And I think this year actually the defense is going to be pretty solid, outside of maybe Polanco and Sano. So I think that it's going to be higher, but I think he's going to put up a similar ERA to last year, but it's not going to be at 2.8. And then 10 wins. I think that he can definitely get more than that. I mean, last year was pretty amazing. Only won 7 games with that ERA. But I think with the offense being better, and I think the team should be better than last year too, I think he should clear the 10-win mark rather easily.
All right. Total number of starting pitchers used for the whole season. I've got the over-under set at 9. Your thoughts?
I would probably go on the over, just because sometimes too with the double headers, that kind of stuff, guys get spot starts. And right now, you don't know what you're going to get out of Mejia, as a rookie, and same with Hughes coming off the injury. And you've got guys like Barrios down in the minors, and Tyler Duffy's a potential to start too, and even prospects, guys like Gonsalves could get up to the majors as well late in the season in September. So to me, I just think there's probably, I think it might be more like 10 guys overall, but I do think that they're probably going to, last year was crazy how many guys they used, but I do think they'll probably go over 9.
All right, 2 more over-unders, and then Nathan will have some questions for you here. Based off, that's below that. Kinsler. So this is assuming Glenn Perkins probably doesn't come back for a while. A number of saves over under 25 for Kinsler.
You know what? Actually, I'll take the over on that. I like Kinsler a lot in terms of his potential. He's not a big strikeout guy, but he can get those ground balls. And I think he's going to be closer pretty much all year unless he's traded or something like that. Just because at this point, like you said, with Perkins, even if Perkins returns at some point this year, I just don't really see him closing again.
Yeah.
Just because that injury, I think, is just such a tough injury to come back from.
Yeah.
Then it's just going to be hard to see him. Yeah, at his age too, and he's really not that close right now to returning at all. I mean, obviously he's on the 60-day ADL. He's thrown with the bullpen still, but not with much velocity. So I think the Kinsler's going to have the job the whole year, barring, a trade at the deadline if they're out of it. Or if he gets hurt, whatever. But I think that, if healthy and everything else, all things considered, I do think he'll get more than that. That's the saves.
All right. Wins for the season, over under 83, what they were 2 years ago.
Ooh, that's a good one. I'm still not fully sold on them being, a great team or anything, but at the same time, I don't think the division's very good.
Yeah.
I think the division's kind of down. I think obviously the Indians are great. Otherwise, Tigers don't have much depth. The Royals, we saw their bullpen's pretty shaky.
White Sox are going to be
The White
terrible.
Sox are rebuilding. But I guess I'd still venture to say the under. I kind of had them pegged to win 78, 79 games, but maybe they'll surprise us, and especially with that division being down, and they look so good so far. But it's hard sometimes to get kind of caught up in 3 games when things can obviously change very quickly from those 3 games.
I mean, they went from 83 down to 59. Why can't they go in the opposite direction, right?
Yeah, exactly. Why not?
All right, and now Nathan, you've got some questions for Rhett, and then we'll let you get out of here, Rhett. Appreciate you being on again. Nathan, fire away.
Yeah, my first one I got for you is based off the first series. What do you think the most important thing for the Twins to improve and what they need to keep doing well on to do well this year is?
That's a great question. I think the big thing they got to improve is they definitely got to get Buxton going for sure. He's going to be a big part of this lineup. I think that's kind of the big thing for him is to kind of get this lineup going a little bit better. I think there's really, in some ways, in that first series, there wasn't that much to improve on. As a team, they did so many things well. Their defense was good, the bullpen was good, the starting pitching was decent. I think they got to. I think Gibson and Santiago have to improve and be a little bit better and get deeper into games. But the big thing that they kind of keep going, I think, too, is just the defense. They got to continue to be playing crisp defensively because last year, as we talked about, it was ugly the way they played. So I think that they can keep that going, keep the bullpen being effective like that. Like I said, to me, it's still a surprise, and I'm not sure if the bullpen's going to fully hold up. But they got to keep that bullpen going and protect those leads because last year, too, we know Twins lost a lot of late leads and lost some games they should have won.
All right. My next question is, what prospect or minor leaguer could come up later in the year that could completely change the Twins season for them?
I don't know if they have anybody in the minors that can completely change the Twins season, but I do think that Jose Barrios has got a chance to come up and make an impact for sure. It was too bad that he didn't get a chance in spring training because he pitched in the World Baseball Classic, and Adalberto Mejia ended up winning the job, which was a surprise. But to Mejia's credit, he had a great spring and has really good stuff. Mm-hmm. But to me, I think the easy answer is Barrios is still their best minor league pitcher they got down there right now, although we know how bad he was last year with the Twins. But even Gonsalves, like I said earlier, is a guy that could come up. But yeah, to me, I think in terms of prospect, because they didn't really have a hitting prospect that's going to come up and I think Palka has got a lot of power, but they don't really have anybody that's like an elite top prospect who's kind of on the fringe of making the roster.
Yeah, and I hear a lot of people talking about Byung-Ho Park coming up too, and possibly filling in at a hitter's position if they need it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm really high on Park. I thought Park had a great spring. He showed a lot of good things with hitting higher velocity. He's got a ton of power. But it was more of a roster thing, I guess. It was more he wasn't on the 40-man. Didn't want to lose Tonkin. Didn't want to lose Haley. We went with the 13 pitchers. They wanted to have Duffy just in case, Hughes or, one of those guys struggled. So that made a little bit of sense. But to me, they got to get back down to 12 pitchers and get Park in there. Because as much as I like Grossman against lefties, I don't think Robbie Grossman should be DHing, full time. So I do think that Park needs to get up there. And he could definitely be a big part of this offense if he's looks like he did in spring, that's for sure.
Yeah, and do you think there's any positions later in the year that if the Twins are still competing in July, could go out and get a big name at if they really need one?
It's a great question. I mean, I think that maybe the bullpen probably be that area. They probably want to improve on that. Yeah, if they're still in it, it could be interesting to see them be buyers. Last year they were sellers, and it helped them get, Mejia for Nunez, and they got, Santiago for Nolasco, which worked out pretty well, I think, all around. They're both part of the rotation now. But yeah, I think the area they probably want to improve, though, if they were to actually be buyers, would definitely be in pitching and probably more likely to go for the bullpen arm, because I don't think they would be willing to really sacrifice much of the future. Because I think they think they're kind of building this year toward better years in general. And they'd love to surprise this year and be good, but I think in general they feel like their best years are ahead of them, and I don't think they'd want to really sacrifice too much of their young talent to do that this year. But I think more than anything probably bullpen arms.
Any other questions there, Nathan?
That's all I got.
All right. Well, Rhett, I know we went a little bit over time, but we appreciate you joining the show and would love to have you back on again sometime.
Yeah, no problem. I definitely had a good time. Absolutely.
Maybe if the Twins are in the World Series, we'll have you back on.
Yeah. We'll see. Anything could happen, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. 30 years ago this year is when they first won their first World Series. So.
Yeah. And last time they were 4-0 was 1987 as well, I looked up. So if they win tonight against the White Sox, there'll be some comparisons.
That's right. Only 4 games in, but there will be comparisons. All right. Thanks, Rhett. Appreciate it. You can catch Rhett Bollinger's work on MLB.com. Also, he talks to some guys on a podcast. It's about a 5 to 10 minute podcast. Rhett, you guys usually do that about once a week, don't you?
Yeah, generally, yeah. With Anthony Castrovins with MLB, we do a little podcast thing. Yeah, it's usually only about 5-10 minutes. It's more of a kind of like almost like a radio hit more than anything. But yeah, we usually post that on the site. And I don't know if we're changing that at all this year. I think this year we're going to do some video stuff too.
Yep.
Sometimes things change with our company, but yeah, usually I do that, and haven't done it in a week though, so I haven't really heard. But I'm sure we'll find out soon about that. But I did do that last year, yes.
All right. Any other articles or pieces that you've got that you want to promote while you're here?
I mean, I think so far it's been fun writing about the wins, and I think I enjoyed writing about Sano the other day and kind of his breakout, and yesterday, it was definitely a fun series to write about. I don't have any big features out right now. I think the big plan is for Monday. I'll have another inbox, so that's kind of what I'd like to promote. I'll have answer some fans' questions for Monday. On Tuesday, the Twins had the day off, and I did a feature on just kind of the fact that they had a meeting before the game. The players had a players-only meeting, which is kind of rare before opening day. And sure enough, their attitude kind of reflected itself in the games. So, yeah, it's definitely been fun writing about this winning team. But, yeah, I think the big one, I guess, is I definitely look out for an inbox here on Monday where I'll answer some fans' questions. All
right, so look out for some answering fans' questions on Monday from Rhett Bollinger on MLB.com and, of course, on TwinsBaseball.com, which is powered by MLB.com. So, Rhett, thank you again for joining us. Appreciate you taking the time to be here today.
No problem. Thanks for having me on. It was great.
All right. Thank you very much. Have a good one. All right. That is going to do it for Rhett Bollinger. Nathan, let's talk about this for just a few minutes. What were your thoughts on Rhett's interview here? What did you think some good points were, and maybe some points that you had a question about a little bit?
Yeah, I really liked him talking about what it would take to keep Molitor keeping his job. Thought that was a really interesting point.
Yeah.
I thought he was pretty safe, but apparently not.
Yeah.
I also really liked his point about Buxton and his confidence and the way he walks around. That's a big part of a player.
Yeah. I was kind of interested in how highly he thinks of Ervin Santana too. I mean, I obviously like Ervin Santana a lot too, but I don't know how often we can count on him to deliver 7 innings, 1 earned run every time. That's kind of what I was thinking on that. But I do really like Ervin Santana. He pitched like an ace on opening day, and if he keeps doing that, then we'll definitely not be complaining. So, any other thoughts on any of this stuff here, Nathan?
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting that he thought they would go through that many starting pitchers this year. I really did not expect that many pitchers to be brought up.
Yeah, I mean, you got the 5 starters, so you already got those 5, and then he thinks there's going to be more than 4 other pitchers involved, which is interesting.
Yeah, it sounds like we're just having 2 starting rotations this year.
Which you never know, especially with Phil Hughes and his shaky health, and if Mejia struggles, and if Gibson struggles, you never know. If anybody struggles, really, which is definitely possible with the Twins. So
yeah, definitely.
So what do you think Ervin Santana is going to do this year? Do you think he's going to be where he was last year, or do you think he's going to be a little better?
I think he's going to be real close to where he was. Maybe not quite that good, but he's going to be real close.
Okay. What did you think about his thoughts on James Rowson? He didn't talk about him much, the new hitting coach. But do you think he's had Do you think he's had some sort of an impact on this Twins team so far?
I mean, so far you have to say he has. I mean, look at their production in the first 3 games last year to this year. I mean, they've put up, last year it was, 3 runs in like 18 games, and they put up, what was the most, 5 in a game this year already?
Yeah, no, actually I think we had a 9-1 game at one point. We had 9 runs when Escobar hit that 3-run home run.
Oh, yeah.
The second game
with the home runs.
Yeah, that was quite the game, and I think they scored more runs in that game than what you said 18 games than they did the whole last season, the start of the season.
The first 18, yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's terrible. I mean, it's good they're doing it now, but that was terrible last year. So glad to have last year in the rearview mirror. So I guess that's it, and we're getting closer to our time here on the show. If you got any last points, go ahead and throw them out.
I've got nothing for you.
Okay. All right. Well, again, we had Twins beat writer for MLB.com, Rhett Bollinger, join us on the show today. It's been my best guest on the show so far. Not that I've had many guests on the Schuby show, but I think he's been the best guest I've had, at least popularity-wise. A lot of people know him that I've had on any of my shows. So great to have him on. And Nathan, great to have you on to ask some questions as well to Rhett. And maybe we'll have to have you on the show again sometime. Hint, hint.
Well, I wouldn't say no.
All right, man. Well, appreciate you joining. And for Carson, a.k.a. Schuby, we will see you next week on the Schuby Show. Hopefully you enjoyed this 2-episode week, and we will be back next week with some more never-ending nonsense with yours truly.
Thanks for listening to The Schuby Show. We hope you mildly enjoyed yourself with more never-ending nonsense with yours truly. For more nonsense, go to the website, theschubyshow.webs.com. Get the show on iTunes, Google Play, YouTube, Stitcher, and TuneIn Radio. Until next time, Skol.